The message came on a Tuesday morning when most of the galaxy was busy with ordinary things. Ambassador Linda Cole stood alone in the empty chamber of the United Earth Assembly, her hands steady as she prepared to speak words that would change everything. The holographic recorders hummed quietly around her. Capturing every detail of this moment for history, she took a slow breath and began speaking in a calm and measured voice. To all members of the Galactic Council, to every species that has shared this journey with humanity, we deliver this final message. Effective immediately, Earth and all human colonies are withdrawing from the Galactic Council. We withdraw from all joint treaties, all shared agreements, and all cooperative ventures. We thank you for your time. She paused for exactly 3 seconds, then added, "This decision is final. There will be no further communication on this matter." The recording ended. Linda turned off the equipment and walked out of the chamber without looking back. Her footsteps echoed in the empty hallway as she made her way to the transport bay, where a shuttle waited to take her home, across the vast emptiness of space. The message traveled at speeds that would have seemed impossible to humans just 2 centuries ago. It reached Nexus Prime, the great station that served as the heart of galactic civilization, within hours. The 17 member species of the Council received it with reactions ranging from amusement to confusion to complete disbelief. High Arbiter Zorvac of the Cathari Dominion was in the middle of his morning meal when his aide brought him the news. He was a tall being with gray skin and 4 arms, and he had served on the Council for longer than most humans had been alive. He read the message twice, then set down his eating implements and laughed. "The humans are throwing a tantrum," he said to his aide. "They do this every few decades when they feel ignored. Send a standard acknowledgement and file this with the other human complaints." His aide hesitated. "High Arbiter, the message states that this decision is final." "They always say that. Give them a few months without our protection and our trade goods and they will come crawling back." "They always do." But Zorvac was wrong, and he would not understand how wrong he was until it was far too late. On Earth, the real work had already begun. Dr. Nathan Price sat in his office at the Global Defense Initiative headquarters in Geneva, watching data streams flow across multiple screens. He was a man in his 60s with gray hair and tired eyes that had seen too much compromise and too much sacrifice over the years. Today, for the first time in a long time, he felt something like hope. His assistant Kelly Morton entered with a tablet full of reports. She was young and sharp and had been with the initiative for only 5 years, but she understood better than most what this day meant. "Extraction rates are ahead of schedule," she reported. 92% of civilian contractors have been pulled from Council space. Military assets are at 67% and climbing fast. Nathan nodded without taking his eyes from the screens. "What about the research stations?" "All human personnel evacuated from joint facilities. We left the equipment as required by treaty, but we removed all proprietary software and data cores." "And the colonies?" Kelly pulled up another report. "Sirius Prime sealed its borders 3 hours ago. Kepler Station followed 20 minutes later. No Council vessels are permitted within 2 light years of any human settlement." Nathan finally looked away from his screens and met her eyes. 40 years, he said quietly. 40 years of bowing and scraping and being told we were not ready. 40 years of giving everything we had and receiving nothing but contempt in return." Kelly said nothing. She had heard the stories from older colleagues, had read the classified histories that most citizens never saw. She knew about the human lives lost defending species that voted against human interests. She knew about the technology shared freely and the gratitude never given. She knew about the Threll. The Threll incident had been the breaking point, though it was only the latest in a long series of betrayals. 8 months ago, a rogue asteroid had threatened the Threll homeworld with extinction. The Council had debated and argued and formed committees while the rock hurtled closer. It was humanity that had acted. Human engineers designed the deflection array in 72 hours of continuous work. Human ships transported the massive equipment across 300 light-years in record time. Human technicians installed the array while working in conditions that killed 11 of them when a reactor failed. Human soldiers stood guard against opportunistic raiders while the operation continued. And when it was done, when the Thrall homeworld was saved and their species continued to exist because of human sacrifice, the Thrall delegation had returned to the council chambers and voted against humanity once again. They cited concerns about human expansionist tendencies when blocking a simple petition for mining. Writes in the Outer Rim. Nathan had watched that vote from this very office. He had watched the Thrall ambassador speak words of caution about the dangerous humans while 11 human families received notifications that their loved ones had died saving Thrall lives. Something had broken in him that day. Something had broken in a lot of people. The decision to withdraw had been made quietly, without fanfare or public debate. The leaders of Earth and the colonies had gathered in secret and agreed that enough was enough. They had spent 40 years trying to earn a seat at the table, and they had finally realized that the table was rigged against them. So they would build their own table. Or better yet, they would need no table at all on Nexus Prime. The first signs of trouble appeared within hours of the human message. A Mithrani diplomat was attempting to contact a human trade representative when she noticed that her translation software had stopped working. The words on her screen appeared as gibberish, random symbols that meant nothing. She called a technician who ran diagnostics and discovered the problem immediately. The translation matrices that allowed the 17 species to communicate with each other were human-designed software. And with the withdrawal, humanity had revoked all usage licenses. The technician reported this to his supervisor, who reported it to the station administrator, who brought it to the council's attention with growing alarm. Similar reports were coming in from across the station. Communication systems were failing. Data networks were slowing. The smooth operation of galactic civilization was grinding to a halt. Hi. Arbiter Zovak dismissed these concerns with a wave of his 4 arms. We have our own technicians. We have our own scientists. We built civilizations while humans were still learning to make fire. We do not need their toys. But when his own technicians examined the failing systems, they found something disturbing. Human technology was not just integrated into council infrastructure. It was the foundation upon which everything else was built. Removing it would be like removing the bones from a body, and expecting it to still stand. The humans had not just contributed to galactic civilization. They had quietly become essential to it. And now they were gone. In her shuttle heading back to Earth, Linda Cole received updates on the Council's reaction. She read about the confusion, the denial, the first stirrings of panic among species that had taken human contributions for granted. She felt no satisfaction, no triumph, no joy. She felt only a deep and weary sadness that it had taken this long for humanity to realize a simple truth. You cannot earn respect from those who have already decided you deserve none. You can only walk away and let them discover what they have lost. The stars streamed past her window as the shuttle carried her home. Behind her, the galaxy was about to learn a very hard lesson about the cost of taking humanity for granted. And humanity was finally ready to teach it. 3 months passed and the galaxy began to fall apart in ways that nobody had predicted. The cracks appeared slowly at first, small problems that seemed easy to fix. Then the small problems became big problems, and the big problems became disasters that no one knew how to stop. Commander Gregory Barnes stood on the bridge of the carrier Resolute, watching his sensors track movement in the Virillion sector. He was a broad man with a shaved head and scars on his hands from 20 years of military service. He had fought pirates and raiders and worse things in the dark spaces between stars. But today he was only watching. His communications officer Paula Wright turned from her station with worry in her eyes. Commander, we are picking up distress signals from the Virillion sector. 3 Thrall colonies are under attack by Kreth raiders. Gregory did not move from his position. He kept his eyes on the sensor display and watched the small dots that represented Kreth, warships closing in on defenseless settlements. How many raiders? 15 ships. Light cruisers and gunboats. The colonies have no military presence. And the council fleet? Paula checked her readings and shook her head. The nearest council patrol is 18 hours away. They will not arrive in time. Gregory nodded slowly. 6 months ago, his ship would have been in that sector? Human patrol routes had covered the Virillion region for 30 years, keeping the peace and protecting trade lanes that the Council species depended on. Human soldiers had died in those dark spaces so that Threll merchants could travel safely. Now the patrol routes were empty and the raiders had noticed. "There's something else," Paula said quietly. "The distress signals include a specific request for Earth Fleet response." Gregory finally turned to look at her. His face showed nothing, but his eyes were hard. "Forward it to the diplomatic corps?" "Standard response." Paula hesitated for just a moment before following the order. She knew what the standard response was. Everyone in the fleet knew. The standard response was silence on Nexus Prime. High Arbiter Zorvak called an emergency session of the Council to address the growing chaos. The Great Chamber was full of worried delegates from 17 species, all talking at once in languages that the failing translation systems could barely handle. Zorvak raised his forearms for silence and the noise slowly died down. "We must address the security situation in the outer territories. Raider attacks have increased by 400% since the human withdrawal. Trade routes are no longer safe. Colonies are calling for protection that we cannot provide." The Threll ambassador spoke up, his voice high and anxious. "We demand that the Council take action. Our people are dying while human ships sit idle in their own space." "The humans have withdrawn from all defense treaties," Zorvak reminded him. "They are under no obligation to protect anyone." "Then compel them to return. They cannot simply abandon their responsibilities." A new voice entered the discussion, calm and musical like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. It belonged to Salathos, the Mithrani ambassador, a being made of living crystal that shifted colors as it spoke. "The humans had no responsibilities to us. They volunteered to patrol those sectors. They volunteered to protect our trade routes. They volunteered to die for colonies that gave them nothing in return." The Threll ambassador bristled at this. "They were junior members of the Council. Service was expected of them." "Expected but never rewarded," Salathos replied. "We took their service as our right and their sacrifice as our due. Now they have chosen to serve themselves instead. Can we truly blame them?" Zorvak cut off the argument before it could escalate. "This debate serves no purpose. We must focus on solutions. What resources do we have to restore order in the outer territories?" The answers that came back were not encouraging. Without human ships, the Council fleet was stretched thin across too many sectors. Without human sensor networks, early warning systems were blind to threats until they were already upon their targets. Without human soldiers, the peacekeeping forces lacked the numbers and the training to handle serious conflicts. And then Salathos raised the question that everyone had been avoiding. "We have attempted to replicate human technology to restore our capabilities. What progress have our scientists made?" The Cathari science minister answered with obvious discomfort. "The human FTL communications array is beyond our current understanding. Our best estimate for successful replication is 140 years. Shocked silence filled the chamber. 140 years? The Threll ambassador repeated in disbelief. "Our civilization will collapse before then." "The humans developed this technology in less than 50 years, Salathos observed. "A species that was still fighting with swords while we traveled between stars. Perhaps we underestimated them." Zorvak slammed his fist on the podium. "Enough of this defeatism. The humans are one species among thousands. We built empires before they existed. We will survive without them." But his words rang hollow in the chamber and everyone knew it. The truth was becoming impossible to ignore. Humanity had not just participated in galactic civilization. They had become the foundation upon which it stood. And now that foundation was gone, on Earth, Linda Cole sat in her office reviewing reports from across Council space. The news grew worse every day. Trade networks were failing as human-manufactured components broke down without replacement parts. Medical facilities were running out of treatments that only human pharmaceutical companies produced. Communication delays were causing diplomatic incidents as messages took days instead of seconds to travel between systems, her aide. Marcus Flynn brought her a new report with a troubled expression. Ambassador, our intelligence sources indicate that the Cathari are mobilizing their military fleet. Linda looked up from her reading. How many ships? Over 200. They are gathering at their forward bases near the border. And their likely target? Marcus hesitated before answering. US intelligence believes they intend to seize human technology by force. They think they can intimidate us into compliance. Linda was quiet for a long moment considering this news. Then she smiled, and there was no warmth in it at all. Let them come, Ambassador? The Cathari have never fought humans. Not really. They have seen us as peacekeepers, as mediators, as the species that always seeks compromise. They have watched us lose ships and soldiers in conflicts where we held back to avoid escalation. Linda stood and walked to her window, looking out at the city below. They think they know what we are capable of? They are wrong. Deep beneath the surface of Mars, in facilities that did not officially exist, technicians were running final checks on weapon systems that the galaxy had never seen. In the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, defense platforms that had been dormant for 20 years were coming online. In shipyards hidden in the outer planets, vessels of war were being prepared for service. For 40 years, humanity had shown the galaxy restraint. They had held back their full capabilities, had accepted losses they could have prevented, had played the role of the eager junior partner hoping to earn respect. That time was over. The Cathari were about to learn what human warfare actually looked like. And the lesson would change the galaxy forever. Marcus watched his ambassador stare out at the horizon with cold determination in her eyes. He had served her for 10 years and had never seen her like this. What are your orders? Linda turned back to face him. Contact Dr. Price at the Global Defense Initiative. Tell him to wake up the sleeping giants. The Cathari want to see human aggression. Her smile grew sharper. Let us show them why the galaxy should have been afraid of us all along. The Cathari Third Fleet entered the Sol system on a cold morning in January. 212 warships moving in perfect formation through the darkness between stars. They were the pride of the Cathari military. Vessels that had conquered dozens of worlds and crushed rebellions across 3 sectors. Admiral Zirith commanded them from the bridge of his flagship, the dreadnought Unyielding Purpose. And he was certain that this would be his greatest victory. He stood before the great viewing window and watched the distant sun grow brighter as his fleet approached. Earth was still far away, a tiny blue dot lost among the stars, but it would not remain safe for long. The humans had insulted the Council. They had withdrawn from their obligations. They had dared to think themselves equal to species that had ruled the galaxy for millennia. Today they would learn their place. Admiral, his tactical officer reported, we are detecting no defensive response. Human space appears undefended. Zirith made a sound of contempt. As expected. The humans know they cannot stand against us. They are probably preparing their surrender even now. He turned to his communications officer. Broadcast our demands. Tell them they will hand over all technology archives and submit to Council authority. Any resistance will be met with overwhelming force. The message went out across every frequency, echoing through the empty space ahead of the fleet. Minutes passed, then hours. No response came. They are afraid, Zirith declared to his bridge crew. They hide in their homes and hope we will show mercy. Continue the advance. We will take what we want regardless of their silence. On Earth, Nathan Price watched the invasion fleet from the command center of the Global Defense Initiative. The room was filled with technicians and officers monitoring every aspect of the approaching enemy, tracking each ship with sensors so precise they could count the rivets on a hull from 1,000,000 kilometers away. Colonel Daniel Hughes stood beside him, reviewing tactical data on a handheld display. They are maintaining standard attack formation. No attempt at evasion or deception. They are coming straight at us. They think we are helpless, Nathan said quietly. They have watched us lose ships in border skirmishes and peacekeeping operations. They have seen us take casualties that we could have avoided if we had fought without restraint. And now? Nathan looked at his old friend with tired eyes. Now we stop holding back. He turned to the room and raised his voice so everyone could hear. All stations, initiate Protocol Silent Thunder. Outer defense platforms will remain dormant until the enemy reaches the optimal engagement zone. I want them deep inside our territory before they realize their mistake. The orders went out and the waiting began. Admiral Zirith grew more confident with every passing hour. His fleet crossed boundary markers where human resistance should have appeared. They passed sensor stations that should have detected them and relay points that should have warned Earth of their approach. Everything was silent and still. The humans have abandoned their outer defenses, his tactical officer observed. They are concentrating their forces around their homeworld for a final stand. Zirith nodded in satisfaction. A foolish choice. They should have met us in open space where they might have delayed our advance. Now we will crush them in a single engagement.
He began composing his victory report in his head, imagining the praise he would receive when he returned to Nexus Prime with human leaders in chains. Perhaps they would give him a seat on the High Council. Perhaps they would name a star system after him. The possibilities were endless. Then the mines activated. They did not explode. There was no fire, no shrapnel, no wave of destruction spreading through the fleet. Instead, reality itself seemed to twist and break around 108 Cathari vessels. Ships that had been cruising smoothly through space suddenly tumbled out of control, their engines dead. Their systems overloaded by forces they could not understand. Zirith gripped his command. Chair's alarms screamed throughout his flagship. What is happening? Report. Gravitational disruption fields, his science officer shouted over the chaos. They are everywhere. Thousands of them scattered throughout our approach vector. They are tearing our ships out of formation and destroying their drive systems. Possible. We detected nothing. They were dormant until we passed. The humans hid them. They knew exactly where we would be. Before Zirith could respond, the defense platforms opened fire. Nathan had authorized non-lethal force. He had made this decision carefully, knowing that destroying the Cathari fleet would unite the Council against humanity. Instead, his weapons targeted engines and weapon systems and communications arrays. Each shot was calculated by computers that processed targeting data faster than any living mind could follow. Each strike was precise enough to disable without killing. The Cathari had never seen anything like it. Their ships were advanced by galactic standards, protected by shields and armor that had withstood countless battles. But human weapons cut through those defenses like they were made of paper. Beams of focused energy sliced through hull plating without triggering a single explosion. Missiles that should have been intercepted somehow evaded. Every countermeasure struck their targets with surgical precision. In 14 minutes, the most powerful military fleet the Cathari had ever assembled was reduced to drifting wreckage. Admiral Zirith stood on his darkened bridge, surrounded by the groans of wounded crew members and the sparking of damaged systems. His flagship was dead in space, engines destroyed, weapons offline, communications reduced to short-range emergency broadcasts only. "Damage report," he whispered, his voice hollow with shock. "All primary systems destroyed. Life support is functioning on backup power. We have approximately 6 hours before it fails." His tactical officer paused, checking his instruments again as if he could not believe what they showed. "Admiral, we have taken no casualties. Our crews are alive. They disabled our ships without killing a single soldier." Zirith did not understand. War was death. War was destruction. War was the strong crushing the weak beneath their feet. What the humans had done was something else entirely. They had swatted aside the Cathari Third Fleet like an adult taking a toy from a child, demonstrating absolute superiority without the need for bloodshed. It was more terrifying than any massacre could have been. "They did not even send ships," his science officer said in a voice that trembled. "These were automated systems, defense platforms and hidden mines. We never saw a single human vessel. Xerath closed his eyes and felt something he had not experienced in decades of military service. He felt fear. Deep and cold and absolute fear. He activated the emergency broadcast and began transmitting on all frequencies. Knowing that the Council would receive his words, "This is Admiral Xerath of the Ketheri Third Fleet. We have been defeated. The humans disabled our entire force in minutes using automated defenses. We never engaged a single crewed vessel. Request immediate rescue. Our life support is failing." He paused, struggling to find words for what he needed to say next. Do not attack the humans. Do not threaten them. Do not provoke them in any way. What we saw today was not their full capability. They were holding back. They showed us mercy when they could have shown us annihilation. His voice broke slightly. The humans are not what we thought they were. They never were. The message ended and silence fell over the ruined bridge. On Earth. Nathan Price listened to the Ketheri Admiral's broadcast and felt no joy in his victory. He had spent his entire career trying to avoid this moment, trying to find a way for humanity to coexist peacefully with species that despised them. He had failed. They had all failed, but perhaps now, finally, the galaxy would understand. Humanity had never been weak. They had been patient. They had been kind. They had held back their true strength in hopes of building something better than conquest and domination. That hope was dead now. All that remained was the cold reality of power, and humanity had just demonstrated that they had more of it than anyone had ever imagined. The galaxy would never look at humans the same way again. Ambassador Linda Cole returned to Nexus Prime 6 months after she had delivered humanity's withdrawal announcement. She traveled alone on a small diplomatic shuttle, without guards or aides or any show of military strength. She did not need protection. The entire galaxy now knew what happened to those who threatened humanity. The great station looked different than she remembered. The lights seemed dimmer, the corridors less crowded, the air itself heavy with a tension that had not existed before. Species that had once walked with pride and confidence now moved with nervous energy, their eyes darting toward every shadow as if expecting disaster to strike at any moment. Linda made her way to the council chamber, passing through security checkpoints that barely glanced at her credentials. The guards who had once treated human diplomats with barely hidden contempt now stepped aside quickly and avoided meeting her eyes. Fear had replaced arrogance. And Linda found that she did not enjoy the change as much as she had expected. The chamber was full when she arrived. Every delegate from every member species was present, many of them attending in person rather than through holographic projection. They had come to see the human ambassador with their own eyes, to try to understand the species that had shattered their assumptions about the balance of power in the galaxy. Linda took her seat in the visitors' gallery, the same seat she had occupied dozens of times over the years when begging for scraps of recognition from beings who saw her as little more than a clever animal. She sat down calmly and folded her hands in her lap and waited. High Arbiter Zorvac rose from his position at the head of the chamber. He looked older than he had 6 months ago, his gray skin marked with new lines of stress and worry. When he spoke, his voice lacked the confidence that had once made him seem invincible. Ambassador Cole, the Galactic Council extends its gratitude for your willingness to meet with us. We hope this is the beginning of renewed cooperation between our peoples. Linda did not smile. She did not nod. She simply looked at him with steady eyes and spoke in a voice that carried clearly through the silent chamber. I have not agreed to renew anything. You requested a meeting? I am here to listen. Zorvac's composure flickered for just a moment before he recovered. Surely there are terms we can discuss. Conditions under which humanity might consider rejoining the galactic community? Perhaps, Linda said. But first, I think we should discuss history. Specifically, the history of human integration with this council. She activated a small device on her wrist, and holographic displays filled the chamber with data. Numbers and charts and images appeared in the air, telling a story that many of the delegates had tried very hard to forget. 40 years ago, humanity was granted provisional membership in the Galactic Council. In that time, We contributed more to galactic infrastructure than any other species. Human engineers designed the communication networks that allow you to speak with each other across vast distances. Human doctors developed treatments for 17 different species-specific diseases that were killing millions. Human scientists solved problems that your researchers had struggled with for centuries. The display shifted to show images of human soldiers, young men and women in uniforms bearing the emblems of Earth and its colonies. Human soldiers died protecting species that voted against our interests at every opportunity. They gave their lives defending worlds that showed them nothing but contempt. Linda's voice remained calm, but something hard had entered her tone. 842 humans died saving the Threll homeworld from destruction. The Threll thanked us by blocking our petition for mining rights. 14 human ships were destroyed protecting Mithrani trade routes. The Mithrani expressed their gratitude by supporting restrictions on human expansion. She stood from her seat and looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of delegate after delegate. You treated us as servants. You took our gifts and offered contempt in return. You called us aggressive while demanding that we fight your wars. You called us primitive while using technology we designed. And when we finally said enough, your first response was to invade our home. Her gaze settled on the Kethari delegate, who seemed to shrink under her attention. Could have killed every soldier in that fleet. Every single one. We had the power to turn those 200 ships into dust and scatter their atoms across the void. We chose mercy instead. Linda paused to let her words sink in. But mercy has limits. The holographic display changed again, showing a map of the galaxy. Human space was marked in blue, a small region compared to the vast territories of the Council species. But thin lines extended from that blue region, connecting to every major system, every trade route, every station and outpost across known space. Everything connected to those lines depends on human technology, Linda explained. Every ship using our faster-than-light drives, every station running our power systems, every world using our medical advances and agricultural techniques, every communication network carrying your words from star to star. She let them look at the map. Let them trace the lines and understand how deeply humanity had woven itself into the fabric of galactic civilization. All of it can be disabled with a single command. Not destroyed, disabled. Your ships would drift. Your stations would go dark. Your worlds would fall silent. Linda's voice was soft now, almost gentle, which somehow made her words more frightening. We do not want this. We have never wanted this. We wanted to be partners, to be equals, to be friends. You refused us at every turn. High Arbiter Zorvac found his voice at last. What do you want from us? Nothing. The answer seemed to confuse him, so Linda continued. We want to be left alone. We want to live in our own space, develop our own worlds, and build our own future without interference from species that have decided we are not worthy of respect. But surely we can negotiate new terms. Trade agreements. Cultural exchanges. Perhaps even a path toward full council membership. Linda shook her head slowly. You had 40 years to offer us those things. 40 years to treat us as equals instead of servants. 40 years to show us even basic gratitude for the sacrifices we made on your behalf. You chose contempt instead. She began walking toward the exit, her footsteps echoing in the stunned silence of the chamber. Wait, Zorvac called out. If you want nothing from us, why did you come here today? Linda stopped at the door and turned to face the assembled delegates one final time. I came to deliver a warning. Humanity is done asking for permission. We are done seeking approval. We are done hoping that you will someday see us as equals. Her eyes moved across the chamber, taking in the frightened faces of beings who had ruled the galaxy for millennia. If you leave us in peace, we will leave you in peace. But if you threaten our worlds again, if you send fleets against our colonies, or attempt to take our technology by force, we will not show mercy a second time. She turned and walked through the door, leaving behind a chamber full of delegates who had finally begun to understand what they had lost. The humans had offered friendship and been rejected. They had offered service and been exploited. They had offered patience and been met with contempt. Now they offered only silence. And that silence was more terrifying than any threat could ever be.